This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are undertaking a truly essential exploration.
Yeah.
We're diving into the extensive research you sent us on the consequences of child abuse and neglect.
It's heavy material.
It absolutely is, and we want to acknowledge that. But our mission here is to give you a structured, a thorough, and really an actionable understanding of these consequences.
And the research really starts with a foundational biological reality.
Okay.
In a good, optimal environment, parents are more than just providers. They are the ultimate buffers.
Buffers.
They act as co-regulators for a child's entire system. They help stabilize everything from physiology like heart rate and hormones to their actual behavior.
Right. The parent is the anchor. They're teaching the child how to handle stress by handling it with them.
Exactly.
So when that primary relationship is the source of fear instead of safety, the damage is just comprehensive.
It is. And that's why the sources talk about cascading consequences.
Yeah,
because human dependence is so extended. We're physically dependent for years and then psychologically dependent well into adolescence. So inadequate care during that long window, it compromises development across basically every single system. The effects ripple across the entire lifespan.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We really need to map these consequences. We're going to look at the neurobiological fallout.
Where it gets under the skin.
Exactly, where it literally changes the body. Then we'll move to the cognitive and psychosocial outcomes. And finally, the staggering long-term health risks and the immense economic burden.
And to do that, we have to look beyond just the family unit. The ecological framework is really the best way to see the whole picture.
The Belsky and Schicketti model, right?
That's the one. The transactional bioecological model.
Right.
It helps us see that an outcome isn't just one thing. It's a dynamic interaction of many things.
So we're mapping where the risks and the protective factors live, not just in the home, but in the whole world around the child.
Precisely. It breaks development down into 4 embedded categories. First, the most immediate one is the microsystem.
The family.
The family, the parent-child interaction, what happens in the household. Then you have ontogenic development. That's the individual child. Their temperament, their skills, their own capacity to adapt.
Okay, so then moving outward from there.
Right, outward. The exosystem is the broader social context. Think about things like parental employment, neighborhood safety, community resources.
Things that affect the parent's stress level.
Exactly. Even if the child never directly experiences it, that stress comes home.
So the microsystem is the parent yelling at the child. The exosystem is the parent losing their job, which causes that stress in the first place.
You've got it. And finally, the broadest layer is the macrosystem.
The culture itself.
Yeah. Sociocultural ideologies, cultural views on violence, attitudes toward corporal punishment. The final outcome for a child is this big, messy interaction of risks and protections across all 4 of those levels.
That framework really helps. But, reading these sources, it's so clear how hard this is to study. I mean, you can't run the gold standard study.
No, a randomized controlled trial on abuse it's just impossible. It's unethical.
So how do researchers get around that?
It's the central challenge. We rely on strong, prospective, longitudinal studies. But even then, you have to deal with just so many confounding factors.
Right, I saw that everywhere. Disentangling the maltreatment from things like poverty or parental mental health or prenatal substance exposure.
Because if you don't control for those, you might think abuse caused a cognitive deficit, when in reality it was maybe the persistent grinding poverty that was there all along. You can find these spurious relationships.
But you mentioned a crucial exception, a study that offered this highly controlled insight, the Bucharest Early Intervention Project.
Yes. This wasn't a true experiment, but it gave us randomized insight into extreme neglect. It was a study of children abandoned to Romanian state-run institutions.
Horrific conditions, just broad-spectrum deprivation.
Absolutely. And the researchers randomly assigned some of those children to be placed in high-quality foster care, while others remained in the institutions.
And that randomization, as tragic as the context is, it provided a control group that you could never ethically create.
It's a landmark study for that reason. It really anchors our understanding. especially when we turn to the biological toll.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Let's dive into the neurology. Where does this adversity literally get under the skin?
It starts by compromising the brain's developing architecture. Specifically, the regions that depend on early environmental input to get wired correctly. And the most consistently affected system is the HPA axis,
The stress response control center.
the hypothalamic pituitary adrenocortical axis, the machinery that floods us with cortisol
Right, for survival.
for survival. Cortisol mobilizes energy to fight or flee, but that comes at a cost. It diverts resources from growth, from immune function, from digestion.
But here's the part I found counterintuitive. Chronic abuse often leads to a flattened or blunted cortisol response over time.
It does. It seems backwards, right?
Yeah, why would more stress lead to a weaker stress response?
The leading theory is that it's a downregulation. It's like the system gets exhausted after being hyperactivated for so long. It just sort of burns out or becomes less sensitive.
Okay.
And the mechanism for this is fascinating. It seems to be mediated by epigenetic programming.
So the early environment is actually changing how their genes are expressed.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not changing the DNA code itself, but it adds these little chemical tags to the genes, specifically the glucocorticoid receptor gene, that control how much that gene is turned on or off.
Wow. So it's chemically writing the blueprint for their entire life's stress response.
It is. And a really memorable, kind of tangible way to see this is with telomeres.
The caps on the end of our chromosomes.
Right, like the plastic tips on shoelaces. They protect the chromosome, and they're associated with cellular aging. High cortisol and chronic stress, they wear those tips down faster.
It's literally accelerating the body's clock.
It is. But here's the crucial note of hope. Studies show that sensitive, high-quality caregiving is a powerful protective factor. It can actually buffer a child's telomere length, even in a high-risk environment. The environment matters.
So let's move from the system level to specific brain structures.
Okay, so we see clear effects in the amygdala, the brain's fear detector. fMRI studies consistently show a sensitized amygdala.
So it's overactive.
It's overactive.
Yeah.
These kids show a heightened response to anything that could be a threat, even just a picture of a fearful face. They're constantly on high alert.
And that's got to affect everything else.
It does. It primes the whole system. Then you look at the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. That's our CEO planning, impulse control. It develops late into our 20s sometimes, which makes it really vulnerable.
So what happens there?
We see functional changes. It can result in activation patterns that look a lot like what you see in children diagnosed with ADHD.
Right.
They really struggle with that inhibitory control.
And what about the brain's wiring? The connections between different parts?
There's some evidence of a smaller corpus callosum. That's the big bundle of fibers connecting the two hemispheres. But the most powerful neurological finding, it takes us right back to the Bucharest Project.
The EEG readings.
The EEG readings, yeah.
Yeah.
The kids who stayed in the institutions, their brainwave activity showed a clear maturational delay. More slow wave activity, less of the fast wave activity you see in typical development.
But here's the aha moment.
This is the big one. The children who were placed in foster care before the age of 2 showed a pattern of brain activity that, over time, normalized. It started to look just like the kids who were never institutionalized at all.
That's a critical clock. It shows this amazing plasticity, this window of opportunity for recovery, but it also shows that that window closes.
It is the single most actionable neurological insight we have from all of this research.
Okay, so if you have a brain that's constantly on high alert with a sensitized fear center and diminished impulse control, how does that sabotage your ability to just function in the world? Let's move to the cognitive and psychosocial outcomes.
The link is direct. Cognitively, those deficits in executive functioning are huge. If you can't inhibit your impulses, you struggle in school, period.
And the data on academic achievement was just alarming.
It is. One big longitudinal study found the average IQ score for abused and neglected kids was about 1 full standard deviation below the matched control group.
A standard deviation, that's a massive difference.
It's huge. And the risk for attention problems skyrockets. One study found nearly 19% of investigated teens scored positive for ADHD. That's, 5 times the rate in the general population?
Just profound. Okay, now for the relational world. The psychosocial outcomes. How does this affect attachment?
It creates deep problems with bonding. You see much higher rates of insecure attachment and, most problematically, disorganized attachment.
And disorganized is the most hazardous outcome, right?
It is. Because the child's source of safety, the parent, is also the source of their fear. There's no coherent strategy for getting their needs met. And that's a strong predictor for later aggression and conduct problems.
They're also at risk for formal attachment disorders.
Yes, particularly disinhibited social engagement disorder. This is where you see kids who are overly familiar with
A
strangers.
child who would walk off with anyone.
Exactly. They haven't formed that secure primary base, so they don't have normal social boundaries. It's a desperate, indiscriminate search for connection.
And this all stems from not learning how to regulate emotions because the parent was either scary or just not there.
Which leads directly to the hostile attributional bias. This is a really powerful defense mechanism.
Give us an example of how that plays out.
Okay, so imagine another kid accidentally bumps into them in the hall. A securely attached child thinks, oops, an accident.
Right.
A child with this bias, their sensitized amygdala fires, and they immediately think, he did that on purpose. He's trying to start something.
So their response is aggressive.
It's aggressive or defensive. And it creates this self-fulfilling prophecy where they initiate conflict, which then confirms their worldview that everyone is hostile.
And beyond the externalizing the aggression, there's also the internalizing problems. Depression, anxiety.
Absolutely. And that connects strongly to dissociation and PTSD. These kids learn to mentally check out to survive overwhelming distress.
It's a survival mechanism.
It is.
Yeah.
But that dissociation is also thought to be a mediator in the intergenerational transmission of harsh parenting. If that's your main coping skill, it's hard to be present and sensitive for your own child later.
And the link to PTSD is just, it's incredibly strong and persistent.
It is. I mean, one study found 23% of sexually abused adults still met the criteria for PTSD at age 29.
Decades later, a quarter of them. That is astonishing. Okay, let's broaden the lens. What does this look like for adults? The societal consequences.
The lifelong physical health toll is just staggering. Adults who had multiple adverse childhood experiences have a much higher risk for chronic diseases. We're talking liver disease, lung cancer, ischemic heart disease.
And the sources point out an important mediator here. It's not just the trauma.
Right. It's the coping mechanisms. The trauma leads to higher rates of smoking, substance use, unmanaged anger. And those behaviors are what directly drive the later physical diseases.
We also see those effects early on, like stunted growth.
In extreme neglect, yes. But again, plasticity is real. You often see these amazing, rapid catch-up growth spurts once a child is placed in a nurturing home.
What about adult functioning in society? Crime, economic stability?
There's an increased risk for general offending and violent crime. And interestingly, the link between physical abuse and later violence is often found to be stronger in girls than in boys.
And then there are the higher rates of substance abuse.
Yes, alcohol abuse and alcoholism, with the effects often stronger and more persistent for women. And tragically, a very large, measurable effect on suicide attempts that lasts well into adulthood.
If we look at their economic lives, the picture is pretty clear.
It's a story of lost potential. Lower levels of education, lower employment, lower earnings. They're less likely to own a home or a car. It's a permanent loss of productivity.
Okay, now for the number that just stops you in your tracks, the societal cost.
The estimated annual cumulative cost to society is $80.2 billion.
$80 billion a year.
And that's just adding up healthcare, juvenile justice, mental health services.
But the core cost is the productivity loss.
That's it. The average lifetime cost for a single case of non-fatal child abuse is estimated at $210,000. And most of that is lost productivity over a lifetime. It's a permanent drag on the economy.
It's a brutal picture of sustained damage. But the sources are also very clear that not all of these children have problematic outcomes.
No, not at all.
So let's bring it back to hope. Let's talk about resilience.
Resilience is defined as a good outcome, despite high risk or recovery from trauma. And the researchers worked hard to find what those protective factors are.
What are the most robust findings? What really moves the needle?
It's really about the environment. While some child characteristics help, like self-esteem, the biggest factors are a stable family environment and, crucially, supportive familial and non-familial relationships.
So a teacher, a coach, a mentor.
Exactly. Those people who can step into the void and provide that consistent, caring relationship, they are critical compensatory resources.
And we also have to reinforce that the nature of the maltreatment itself, the dose, it matters.
It matters immensely. The timing, the severity, and especially the chronicity.
The longer it goes on.
The longer it goes on, the more reports a child has, the worse the outcomes are predicted to be across every single domain we've talked about today.
So if we connect this all together, The really hopeful finding is that changing the environment can change the brain. It can change health. It can change behavior. That window of opportunity is real.
The Bucharest finding proves it. It's a profound demonstration of neuroplasticity. The system is built to recover if you give it the right inputs early enough.
So, here's the final thought for you to consider. Given the powerful findings that chronic exposure to abuse predicts worse outcomes, and knowing that interventions before age 2 can lead to more normalized brain activity, what specific societal changes are most urgently needed to move beyond simply reporting abuse and toward immediate, sustained support that minimizes that chronicity and maximizes that early window of opportunity?
A powerful question.
Yeah.
It forces us to shift from just tracking the problem to building preventative systems that stop the damage before it gets biologically wired in.
And that is where we will leave this deep dive for today. Thank you for walking us through this essential and difficult but ultimately hopeful material.
Thank you. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.